Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello, this is Kevin Pilsner, also known as Tinfoil on Facebook. This is Caution Tinfoil Haya. Call ID number 89564 on TalkShoe. And tonight I have a guest with me, Mark Passio of What on Earth is Happening, as well as a few other events he is going to being able to speak of as to what he's been involved in. He and I have been working together on a couple of projects as of late, and I'll be introducing him in just a moment. Two quick announcements. First off is Cockadoodle-Doo. That's basically going to be an overnight laser tag and music benefit for the Venus Project. It's a $20 price, includes a family-friendly environment, 3 games of laser tag. Later on, over 2 hours, may not be able to play all 3 games, so please arrive early. It starts at 12:30 a.m. on June 25th, but that's the evening of Friday, June 24th. It's an overnight event. There are 3 DJs confirmed. There'll be a movie with outreach information, a door prize for 1 lucky winner, as well as a few gift certificates for local vendors. One specifically is Sculpri Studios. You can find them on Facebook as well. She has just started a yoga studio there, and if you could want to find out again about Sculpri Studios, that there'll be some information on the flyers at the event. Also, please, if you would be so kind as to wear blacklight reactive clothing if possible, it is highly encouraged, so as to add to the environment that's already there for the laser tag arena itself. Hope everybody can make it out and have a good time there. My co-host here, Mark Passio of WhatOnEarthIsHappening.com, will also be there to promote the Tesla Energy Celebrations. Mark, would you like to speak on that?
Sure, Kevin. Having me on today with you, I appreciate it. The Nikola Tesla Energy Independence Celebrations is a yearly event hosted by the Tesla Science Foundation, an activist group here in the Philadelphia area that Kevin and I both work with. And every year they have a celebration hosted around Tesla's birthday. Tesla was born on midnight between July 9th and 10th, 1856. So they celebrate Tesla's birthday on around July 9th and 10th every year here in Philadelphia. And they have an event called the Nikola Tesla Energy Independence Celebrations. So the Energy Independence Celebrations for this year is going to be July 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, 4 days here in Philadelphia. And there's 4 separate events. There is the Tesla Science Conference, which is going to be happening every day during the Energy Independence Celebrations, July 7th through 10th, at 2 Liberty Place, 50 South 16th Street. That's where 2 Liberty Place is at here in Philadelphia. The Tesla Science Conference, July 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, 8:30 a.m., starting at 8:30 a.m. each day and going until 5 o'clock p.m. each day. There's going to be about a total of about 25 speakers in all. And it's only $100 for registration for all 4 days of this science conference based around Tesla's technologies and theories. So there's also a 50% discount for students with a valid student ID. Students get in all 4 days, only $50. The second event is a Tesla Science Foundation social, a meet and greet. There will be some speakers there, and there will also be a concert featuring a theremin-based ensemble called the Divine Hand. They're a great orchestral ensemble surrounded around the theremin instrument, which is an electronic instrument. And I highly encourage people to check out this great orchestral ensemble based here in Philadelphia. You could check out their website at divinehand.net. The Science Foundation Social featuring the Divine Hand Ensemble will take place on July 9th at 5:30 p.m. at the Ethical Society of Philadelphia, and this will be going on until about 10:30 p.m. The Ethical Society building is at 1906 South Rittenhouse Square. Tickets for the social and concert are $20 in advance and $24 at the door. Also, going on July 9th, there will be a Tesla birthday celebration featuring a Tesla coil exhibition at Independence Visitor Center on Independence Mall, 5th and Market Streets. July 9th, 11 o'clock p.m. to 1 a.m. Again, as I said, Tesla was born on midnight between July 9th and 10th, and they're going to have this Tesla birthday celebration around midnight. So from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. at 5th and Market, Independence Visitor Center lawn, a Tesla birthday celebration featuring a Tesla coil being fired off at midnight, and this event is free to attend for all. Finally, there will be exhibitions and open discussions called Tesla Fest, July 9th and 10th. On July 9th, it's going on all day long from 10 a.m., that's a Saturday, going on all day long from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., and on July 10th, that's a Sunday, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., also at Independence Visitor Center lawn, 5th and Market Streets in Philadelphia, and this event is also free to attend. So a lot going on based on Nikola Tesla and his great contributions to humanity, and also trying to make people aware that this technology has been with us and has been suppressed over the last 100 years, and we need not be bound to the energy paradigm that we are currently bound to for a moment longer if we only decide to rediscover this great inventor's genius and then actively apply it in our world today. So I highly encourage everybody to come out to this event. You'll learn a whole lot. You'll meet a lot of great people. And if you want to learn more about it, you can visit the group's website at teslasciencefoundation.org.
Thank you, Mark, for explaining all that. I know there's a lot of information there. We also wind up handing out quite a bit of information at First Fridays in Philadelphia as well. We try to, as often as possible during the summer, get down there so that we can give out information on we work with a couple different groups. I mean, specifically lately, Mark has been out there with the Nikola Tesla Foundation, of course, and I've been out there with the Venus Project, handing out information, not just for the fundraiser coming up, but also just in general about Jacques Fresco's designs as well, who is also essentially another part of tonight's broadcast title and topic, which is Marginalized Sciences, and how, well, even Roxanne Meadows, I just heard yesterday on TeamSpeak, they had a meeting with question and answers with Roxanne, who's like the second-hand person over at the Venus Project. Jacques is specifically also on the call, and they were speaking about how in 1927 we could have started that sort of direction, and many of the basic concepts were originally all designed back then. It's just now a matter of having all these different designs interlaced and interconnected and able to flourish because of the capacity of humanity to finally communicate with each other on such a scale that it is today with the internet, that we now have the ability to take all these things that we've known for so long, and in the case of Nikola Tesla, over 100 years now, it's truly almost mind-boggling that we have been held back to such a capacity, and largely due to the profit motive. Mark, would you like to? Yeah, go ahead, chime in on that.
Tesla was marginalized because he wanted to give free energy to the entire world. That would have leveled the playing field all across the world. Third world countries would have been industrialized basically had the capacity to be industrialized overnight, and solve so many problems that they still face to this day. And globalist interests did not want that. Among Tesla's backers was J.P. Morgan, the Astor family, the Rothschild family. These people have tremendous financial interests in not having technologies like this see the light of day, because the control of energy is essentially the control of human beings, and that's what they want to do. They want to maintain their hegemony and control, and they don't want to see that slip through their fingers by having an empowering technology put into the hands of the everyman. And that's what Tesla's technology certainly would have done, and therefore these international financiers have it in their interest to block that and suppress it by whatever means they could. Of course, also, military-industrial complex interests would want this technology to be kept under wraps, to weaponize it and use it as a tactical advantage for basically world empire. And both of these things have been done effectively, but still the truth has slowly come out over the years, and Tesla's name has enjoyed a resurgence in recent years. I think many people still do not know who the man was, what he did. They don't even know that he brought electricity into our homes in the form that we know and use it today, bringing the polyphase system of alternating current power generation and distribution into our homes. People don't even know he's responsible for that. They only know the name Edison, but Tesla's name is left out of history books. And I always ask people to just think about who has the power to erase a man who has done so much for humanity, who has the power to erase his name from history, to decide what our school children will hear and won't hear by leaving it out of history books and marginalizing, what this man did in human history. Arguably the greatest inventor who ever lived, certainly the greatest inventor of the 20th century, and we don't hear about him in school, in history textbooks. And I would just ask people, just think about the question, what does it take to get that done? Who could block the knowing from our school children of someone who was this influential in world affairs? Who has that power?
It would seem the mass media would be one of the first people, whoever's writing the textbooks, of course.
Well, that's really the answer to the question. You have to look at what publishing houses own those, put those textbooks out. And if you look at the interests that own those publishing houses that write textbooks for schools, you'll see that they're owned by all the same financial interests that had a vested interest in blocking Tesla's technology, and therefore they're also marginalizing his name.
Yeah, it's amazing.
People doing it.
It's amazing that, at the same time, there are also other people who are considered part of that mass media who are actually getting his name out there. As silly as it is, children are likely going to learn a little bit more about him from seeing movies
Prestige.
Yes, the Prestige is definitely something for adults, which was really a great film and a lot of fun to watch and had a lot of twists and turns, to say the least. But there's also Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. In the very beginning of it, the main character had a picture of rock star scientist Nikola Tesla, like that specifically with the poster. And then there's also in the more recent Disney film called The Sorcerer's Apprentice, based on the old theme from the Fantasia soundtrack. They specifically have in it a Tesla coil, actually a couple Tesla coils that are generating music as a sousaphone, able to create, the guy uses it to actually kind of teach his girlfriend about how he's been listening to the music that she's been playing on her radio broadcast as part of the plot of the story. And it's kind of really beautiful to hear this electrical popping creating this almost 8-bit music. It's really impressive. I've seen some other things where a guy had him on stage and was standing in between him in a suit and had everything from the Ghostbusters theme to like the Legend of Zelda from the old Nintendo games, like all these different themes of music that he was able to create. I can only imagine the Divine Hand Ensemble is slightly different due to the fact that the theremin is not a sousaphone. They are definitely two different instruments.
Right, absolutely. I'm not familiar with those two movies that you brought up. I'll have to check them out. I didn't realize that Tesla was, getting his name put out there in popular works of fiction again since the Prestige movie came out. But yeah, the theremin is an interesting instrument. It's got a very, very distinct sound to it. People may recognize its sound from different horror movies, but or UFO-related films. The whole spooky sound, sets that air of strangeness and whatnot. But the Divine Hand uses it in an altogether different way, and Mano Divina, the leader of the Divine Hand Ensemble, really is an absolute virtuoso with the theremin and plays it like a classical music instrument, and just does a beautiful job of really making it sing. It brings it to life like a human voice almost. It's something that really has to be experienced. I definitely recommend people go up to their website and check it out. They have some videos of them playing, and it's much, much better experienced live. So definitely something that people don't really get to see or experience all too often. I think they're the only classical theremin ensemble in the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
We're lucky enough to have them here in the Philadelphia area.
Right.
Speaking of the Philadelphia area and some of the things that we're lucky enough to have, you and I actually met because of Germ Bookstore, which is sadly no longer in existence to my knowledge. Is this true?
Yes, Dave closed it up. I think he couldn't meet certain financial pressures with the bookstore being open, so he had to shut it down. Unfortunately, a few of us tried to do what we could to keep it open or continue it in that location. That really didn't work out, also because of financial considerations. So I'm working with a couple of people to try to open a new bookstore in the area. It hasn't been going too well so far. We're looking for a decently priced location that we can rent. So we really have nothing like Germ Books to replace that in this area, and it's unfortunate because Germ Books was one of the places that was doing a lot to bring to light some of these suppressed energy technologies through the books that it was selling. And they've always had a great stock of Tesla books and other suppressed science topics in there, which anybody could go in and pick up a great selection at any given time on any of those topics. So it is definitely a horrible thing that we no longer have a place like that in the Philadelphia area, but hopefully we'll be able to put one together in the not too distant future if things go well.
It really was an excellent community center. I mean, it was one of my best friend's birthdays. I guess it was March 15th. Yeah, it was the Ides of March. That's why I remember it so well, actually. When I met you, I believe it was in like either 2007 or 2008, where they had a Z-Day there where they played the original Zeitgeist movement movie, the Zeitgeist movie, and that's how we actually met, was at I believe at that meeting that day.
Yes, that's right. It was a great place to meet people of like-minded interests, and he had a lot of great lectures in there, video screenings, meetup groups, discussion groups. It's just it's very missed, and right now some of the meetup duties are being handled by a scene food market, but it's not the same as a bookstore. We definitely need a place that's a house of knowledge in the area to handle those functions, because people can meet and they have like-minded interests, but they could also pick up supplemental material or just grab something off the bookshelf and point something out. That's what was so great about meeting at that location. So, like I said, hopefully with the help of some other people in this area, maybe in the near future I'll be able to put something together similar to Germ to fill its role in the community.
That would be awesome. I'd have a few books, actually. I'd like to even donate to the opening of that, just because I think it would be they're definitely unique. So a friend of mine had in his old closet and he gave them to me and had put them in my garage for a while. And then when I moved, I brought them with me. They're basically some old books on Scientology. I've barely even touched them, but I have skimmed through Dianetics in the past, which is another one that's laying in there again. We've had this one of the first conversations I remember us even having about was the fact that it's one thing to actually glean a little bit of knowledge from, say, something like Dianetics, but it's also a terribly different story to kind of be swept up in the sadly what's become almost a cult-like atmosphere for the Scientology group, which in and of itself was actually even started as strangely a truth movement in and of itself, but has sadly been
co-opted, certainly.
Precisely.
Yeah, I read Dianetics way back when, and I thought it was a decent rudimentary explanation for how the brain basically works. And I think that's why they didn't want people looking into it, because if you start to get into how the brain works, sooner or later you're going to understand why human consciousness is in the pitiful and deplorable condition that it is on this planet. I think Dianetics did a decent job explaining the reactive mind, which I put forward as the workings of the R complex of the brain, the lower base brain. Like in all of my lectures, I go through the triune components of the human brain, namely the reptile complex, the limbic system, which is the mammal brain, or the part that is responsible for helping us to experience emotions, and then the neocortex, which is the higher thought functions of the brain that make us truly human, with the left and right brain hemisphere, the male and female components of the brain that we need to bridge and bring together in order to awaken higher states of consciousness. But I think Dianetics showed us that if we live all the time in that reactive part of the brain, the base brain, that things basically aren't going to go in any way that we expect them to go, and we're going to just continue to go through cycles of suffering until we decide to leave that part of the mind, that reactive base brain, the reptilian brain, and move up to higher modalities of consciousness by getting in touch with the higher parts of the brain. So I think that's why certain interests did not want that looked into, and basically co-opted it, turned it into a religion, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I that's pretty much the story that I was told. The person that was involved that had given me the books essentially said that they were involved for a little bit because it was, like I mentioned, like a little bit of a truth movement, and then it just became co-opted, and he quickly left the organization because he saw that level of infiltration.
Sure.
It's very difficult to, I guess they call it grassroots wilt.
Right.
And it often happens when I've seen it most often happen when a specific sprout from the grassroots kind of flowers out so largely that it covers and shadows the rest of the group, to continue the metaphor, and ends up choking the grass around it, whatever life is around it, because of the lack of sun. It's a shame that we haven't all learned those basic concepts of I don't know, the most basic concept of, say, even theosophy that I've always appreciated since I very first heard about it, even in that Zeitgeist movement film, is that they, or after studying it, I should say, after seeing that film, I specifically wound up in a position where I found its most important core value was to teach people to teach others to be leaders. In studying about them, I heard that they had actually closed down their doors because people were looking to the leadership so much that they were not doing what the leadership was originally expecting, which was everyone to start to stand up and take responsibility for themselves and become more active members in society and not just be one of the sheep following along. I mean, I hate to even say that about people anymore, but unfortunately, other people have said even deeper and darker things. If you've mentioned in your video on the that you had, which was sure. I thought amazing. I mean, the fact that they call these people the dead really kind of is very surprising to me, and I don't completely agree with it, because I believe there's always that spark that can be brought back. I believe that, like, say Lazarus was even just in a state of depression, and it took something like the love of Christ, that level of consciousness, to come along and be like, hey, we love you. We need you out here in the real world. Please don't, like, disappear into your depression. And that, I think, was how he was kind of reawoken. I know that's a very Jungian type of view of it, but it still just inspires me in a lot of ways, because I feel that people need to take that concept and run with it. Like, we need to wake the dead. We need to work on our, for lack of a better term, necromancy.
It's all about becoming a leader in and of ourselves. We can't look to an external savior to come and rescue us from ourselves. We created this situation that we're in, and only we can get ourselves out of this situation through an act of our own will and personal growth and personal responsibility. And this is what most people in the modern world want to run 1,000 miles in the opposite direction away from, because they don't want that level of personal responsibility in their lives, because it means becoming the leader yourself and taking the appropriate action to correct the horrible tailspin as a species. And most people don't want to do that. They want to wait and watch and let somebody else do that work for them. And, life is not a movie that we're watching on a screen, folks. We have to become actively involved, and just knowing about things doesn't accomplish anything either. To know and not to do is not to know. You have to convert your knowledge into action. That's what wisdom is. That's what real enlightenment is.
And the simplest form of that action is just to be able to speak to others. I mean, there's the great cartoon I keep talking about because it just really impacted me so much recently, is that quite likely the possibility of these 5 people that are standing on a train as stick figures with their thought bubbles all reaching up into the top, and it simply says that in a world of sheep, there's all these people who have no consciousness. I'm just the only person who understands and is enlightened. It's 5 people all being silent on a train, thinking the same thought, going to work. Yeah.
That's great.
And imagine how much this world would change if these people just on the subway or on, like, what we have in Philly, except on the L stations, like, if they actually start to talk to each other in these little compartments, like, actually had the capacity to, like, I know you're tired in the morning and you're tired in the afternoon and you just want to, like, stare off into space and relax from the day, or like try to wake yourself up before you get into work. But at the same time, maybe a conversation with a peer that happens to be sitting next to you would be just the right thing to help wake you up.
Yeah, absolutely. We need more direct channels of communication opening up between people, because most people are just too silent. They think that, that finding out about the things that are broken or wrong with the world is the end of the process. Well, now you know. Now what are you going to do about it? That's the main key. You have to get involved with other people so that you can take action. And, another component is not letting other people stop us from what we have the right to do. We have the right to transform this world for the better. These sick, twisted occultists that you talked about, who call other people the dead because they don't take action, they don't have any intelligence, and they don't care, and therefore these psychopaths who are running things right now consider them the dead, that, because they don't have an activated consciousness, they consider them, for all intents and purposes, not alive. They don't have a right to stop people from transforming things for the better. They want to pass all of these laws that you can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. They cannot stop us from doing what is within our natural law rights to do. And, things like what's going on with all of these draconian laws being passed and police state measures taken to try to stop people from becoming activists, speaking out, telling the truth about what's going on in the world, simply have to be rejected out of hand. I know I'm not going to stop no matter what anybody does. And a bullet's not even going to stop me because I'll be back.
I understand.
Trust me.
I understand. It's that there's definitely it's the level of freedom that they're trying to take away from us that I find the most haunting. And there are so many beautiful possibilities for this world. It's truly a shame to see it held back just simply by greed. And like you're saying, we have all these laws, and there are even more subtle things, like corporate controls that are also there, like non-disclosure agreements. And when people in a company sign on to these things, say you've got 5 different companies, 5 different guys from 5 different companies that are like, say, a person from Motorola and a person from Sony and a person from Microsoft, a person from IBM and a person from Apple. They all have these different components and different ideas that are truly innovative and able to change the world and maybe create something that would make any of these 5 different companies' basic design, their actual designs singularly combined instead and form a much better tool.
Right.
And with that tool, we could really change things even further, and we could make these things cheaper if we actually were able to work together and have all the resources needed to actually.
But instead, intellectual property comes first, and profit comes above all else, and therefore, any of the transformation capacities that these new technologies might have get pushed to the wayside because of those interests. It's all about the level of consciousness of the person coming up with these things. Again, I see so many inventors, talking about their holy grail being the patent. And I'm going to probably make some people upset with this, but so be it. You're running right into the arms of your enslaver with the idea that the patent is what you want to live for. This whole idea of intellectual property and stopping other people from doing something with this or that piece of technology. They don't have the idea of open sourcing in their head, of putting something out there so that the idea, humanity can benefit from it. That doesn't occur to most people. They're interested in the money. They're interested in, them being accredited, but never just with humanity benefiting from it. And until the primary motivation changes from profit motive, intellectual property, patenting, and recognition to will humanity benefit from this? And if so, I want to make it available freely. It's going to be business as usual here, folks. So that's going to burst some people's bubble, but people want to believe in things that don't exist, like money. Doesn't exist now, never has existed, never will exist, is a pure mind control construct that exists nowhere else but in the human mind, and people have bought it. They've bought it hook, line, and sinker. They believe that this exists, and they base all their actions upon this. And it's all there just to control your actions. That's all it's there for. It's all it ever has been there for. And occultists put it there. But, that's really kind of a little outside the scope of the discussion today, which is, the suppression of these technologies, which we're going to get into. But
it's not completely out of the scope, because part of the situation is the fact that it's money that is holding back these things. I mean, Tesla's technology was held back because they couldn't put a meter on it. Right now, Fresco's ideas are being held back because he doesn't have an entire country or an entire world to back the concepts to bring us into a Type 1 civilization and out of this Type 0 civilization that we're currently in. Like, we're not even technically civilized yet by the standards of most scientists as a species.
Yeah, if we don't change our consciousness soon, this Type 0 civilization is going to become the great negative, if you know what I mean, and it's going to cease to be. because we only have these windows of opportunity to make these transformational shifts in consciousness, and then when they're gone, they're gone. And, I think humanity is basically running right into the arms of its own devastation willingly, because it's too fearful to make this change in consciousness, which I find so odd, because I don't understand what people think they have to hold on to. I can't imagine what they even imagine that they have. They're literally penned animals, and the door to the pen is wide open, and yet they prefer to stay inside their little corral there, because that's where it's safe, that's what's comfortable, and that's what they know. And it doesn't matter whether that area of the world is on fire. They would still rather stay there and die, rather than make a small shift in consciousness, which is all that it would take to see a radical transformative effort take place here on Earth and transform this society into something that we could scarcely even imagine at this point. That's even part of the problem, is people have lost their dynamic human imagination, which we once had in abundance in this planet, and drove this country in particular to great heights. But now people can't even seem to imagine things being any other way than as they are now. They have this idea that things have always been this way, they are this way now, and they will forever be this way. And I can't think outside of that box enough to think how something could transform this world and it be completely different than the way we see it now. And if you can't imagine a change, you can't ever really manifest that change. It can't come into fruition. It can't come into manifestation unless you could first imagine it. Everything exists first in the human imagination before it becomes manifested in the physical reality. Everything that we do and have done. There's not one thing you could think of that did not exist first in the human imagination before it came into physical reality. And if you lose that capacity for the imagination, you're done. You're done as a species. And sadly, that's what the left-brained, purely scientific, without any holistic intelligence. We have a lot of scientific know-how, but not a lot of holistic intelligence, particularly in this country, which is all left brain without the imaginative and creative capacity of the right brain. And that imaginative capacity has basically been bred out of us by our Western educational or indoctrinational system that we have here, which is based all on Soviet models of outcome-based education. And until we change that and get back to a classical form of education, we're not going to see that imagination fostered that's necessary to get us out of this mess.
Yeah, I was trying to. I want to thank you also for introducing me to Jan Irving. And part of your conference had his amazing tale of the trivium and the quadrivium that I've heard of in previous months, but I'd never been exposed to it before the last year, to be honest. I've only recently, like this year, heard of it for the very first time. And this is part of a classical education that I was never a part of me, that I was only taught to think of like things and times and dates and memorize this, and that was all. They never really taught me how to think.
Well, occultists don't want this knowledge coming out. This is knowledge, the trivium in particular, it was taught by the mystery schools of the ancient world. This is what occultists have had in their repertoire for thousands of years and don't want coming out to the everyday person because, again, it's one of these things that's capable of leveling the playing field between people. Knowledge isn't power in and of itself. It's what you do with knowledge that converts it into power because it becomes a differential between people. A huge knowledge differential becomes a huge power differential. And that's why they don't want the trivium being understood or taught or even known about. But the renewed interest in the occult in particular and people beginning, just the very, very, cracks in the dam beginning to appear, to emerge in, people developing an interest in the occult and understanding its significance in the modern world, because this knowledge is basically what's been controlling the world since ancient times. this renewed interest in the occult is bringing forward this renewed interest in the classical education system.
Yeah, not a moment too soon, because to be honest with you, I feel like I need to find a way to go out there and learn it myself so that I can teach it to my son. He's only 7 now, and I don't know when to even start this sort of education, so I feel like I have to start just on educating myself in these different areas.
Sure. It's a huge field. I mean, and it parlays into so many other avenues of interest that it's a lifetime of reading that really needs to be done. And, like everybody knows, we're so busy doing the general tasks of just surviving and living on a day-to-day basis, it's difficult to take in all that information unless you really make a concerted effort of will to do it.
Yeah, it's very true. Real quick, I'm going to throw out the phone number for the show is 724-444-7444. That's call ID number 89564, and you want to hit £1 in order to get through. If you happen to be listening in and live near the Philadelphia or specifically Bucks County neighborhood and would like to make it out to the Cock-a-Doodle-Doo, a night of laser tag and music for the Venus Project, you're welcome to call in and answer the trivia question that we have in order to be able to get 2 free tickets for this evening's festivities. We'll also be discussing some of the other things that will be coming up in the future while there as well. It's going to be a night of awareness as well as just fun for like dancing and playing laser tag and so on and so forth. So if you happen to be able to give a call in or interested and live close enough to take part in these festivities, please give a call in now, and I will happily make that offer out to you so as to be able to get the information to you. Phone number, once again, is 724-444-7444. Call ID number 89564, and then you want to hit £1 to get through. Mark, I always like to actually have a moment for all of my guests to basically take a moment and hop on the soapbox and really speak their mind about, like, what's the one thing that you really, what's the most critical solution that you think you could share with all the peers that you would believe that might be listening in on this?
Sure. People have been asking me this a lot lately, and I've basically been giving the same answer. And for those who know me, this won't come as too much of a surprise if you're new to any of my work. First, I'd suggest going to What on Earth is Happening and checking out my material, which will give you a good tapestry of information to work with and do further research on your own about what's really going on here. But I'm not of the, quote, New Age movement type thought process. Now, again, that comes as no surprise to anyone who knows me. And this means I'm not what I would consider a positivist that always wants to say everything will be okay no matter what happens, because I don't believe that. I think our destiny is in our hands. If we use our will, if we use our intelligence, our care, and our will in the right ways, we will benefit. If we don't, we will suffer. So it's up to us. That's the first and foremost thing. Secondly, it's more, the solution lies so much more in what we need to stop doing than in what we need to do, that people would be astounded if they understood really how little it is that we need to do versus what we need to stop doing that we are already doing. And this is kind of the idea of approaching the solution from the negative. Okay, it's considered an apophatic approach. This comes from the old apophatic schools of theology that basically look at what God is not versus trying to define the ineffable, okay, and saying what God is. They say you'll come to know what the source or the all is by just looking at the things that you know it is not, the qualities that it really does not contain, okay, that are not the things that you would consider all good, all knowing, all powerful, etc. Okay, so fear is not of God. Hatred is not of God, etc. This was the idea of the apophatic school of theology. Well, I have an apophatic approach to solutions-based thinking, and that is it's so much less about the things we need to do than it is what we need to stop doing that we're already doing. And by that I mean we are doing so many things in the world as a species, okay, as a culture in general, that is completely in contravention to natural law, okay, to the laws of the universe, to the laws of how reality is actually structured and works. And when we do certain things, we get other things in return. People have called this the law of attraction. They've called this karmic justice, okay, etc. There's 100 different names for it. The golden rule. You can call it whatever you want, but it is essentially the principle of cause and effect. That effect invariably follows the cause that we set into motion. And the causes that we are setting into motion are creating effects that we don't want because they're in contravention to natural law. So we need to stop doing the things that we're doing that are in contravention to natural law. And the only way you can really do that is to know what your rights are and what they are not. And unfortunately, that comes from knowing the difference between what a right is, meaning what right is, and what a right is not. Or in other words, what wrong is, what it is to wrong someone. And sadly, this is the whole nature of the problem, is that human beings literally either don't really know the difference between right or wrong or have ceased to care about the difference between right and wrong. And yes, ladies and gentlemen who may be listening, I know, and there's probably a lot of people out in the audience who might be listening to this podcast who may be moral relativists and don't think there is such a thing as objective right or wrong. I assure you there is such a thing as objective right and wrong, and that's why the world is in the state that it is, because we are just flying in the face of those natural law principles that we are eternally bound by, that exist independently of us in the universe, and that it doesn't make a difference whether we accept them, believe in them, know about them. We are bound by them and we are affected by them. And until we learn those laws and those principles and how they work, and then we come into unison with them, into harmony with them, and stop working against them, expect to suffer endlessly, until you learn what natural law is, you learn what right and wrong is, you learn what your rights are and what your rights are not, and you stop doing things that are in contravention to natural law. The end. And that's all there really is. There isn't anything other than that, to be honest. That is the only solution. That's all there is. If you do that, you'd stop doing those things that are in contravention to natural law. The suffering, the self-inflicted suffering that is so prevalent on this planet would practically go away overnight.
It is largely about the apathy that people then have towards this whole towards whatever situation is in front of them as well. That there's even last week there was a thing where they called it "I don't give a fuck day" on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They sent out this invitation, and 500,000 people signed on.
Yep.
I just kind of as a contravention, just because I couldn't, because I just felt the need to do it. I don't know how else to explain it, but like to just create an opposite of it, where I just created I Care Day and sent it out to all of my friends.
That's great.
And I was just like, here's the link to the other people's site. Take a look. This is what it's all. This is wholly and responsible for what is truly wrong with our world right now.
That's right.
So please just sign in and like you don't even have to sign on. Just go care about other people. You
Right.
You don't even have to attend this event.
Kevin, that's the primary thing that is creating the darkness that we see around us is apathy. Everything we're going to talk about today when it comes to technology, okay, is all about how energy works and is used by us. And the primary source of that energy, okay, of course, ultimately all energy comes from the one source, the all, the unified field, whatever you want to call that, the creative primal intelligence inherent to creation. Call it whatever you want. Some people prefer to call it God. I really don't care what you call it, okay? The thing that does matter is that we embody that energy through what is called the generative principle. That's how that energy is employed in the world. And the generative principle is all about what we care about. What we care to put our energy into is what we will manifest in our lives. If we don't care to make the world better, it will gradually get worse. If we don't care to improve ourselves, we will gradually get worse and be continuously downtrodden and suffer more and more and be imprisoned more and more. If we do care, then our actions will reflect that care. We employ will. After caring, then you take action. Okay? So you even need to care first before you know. Care comes first before even knowing, because it's an act of will to start to learn. You have to recognize your own ignorance, your own darkness, and then start to learn. Then you have to apply care again a second time to actually take action based on what you now know. So it's a twofold process. Knowing and then doing. And care is the basis of both of those things, both of those dynamics. It is the prime generator of our experience. It is the energy pump, so to speak, a generator, literally, of the manifested reality that we live in. It is care. That is what the generative principle or the creative principle of the universe is. So I want to commend you for doing that. I mean, I have to say that's fantastic, because look at how many of these people who are completely apathetic and think that that's such a great idea that people came up with a I don't care day, I don't give a fuck day, you know? I mean, imagine that that's what they're putting their energy into, saying and flaunting that they don't care about anything.
500,000 people versus the like 350 I got for mine.
Right.
I'm shocked that there was as many as there was sometimes. Like, and that's like
it just shows you the mindset these people are in.
Yeah,
it's really pathetic. I mean, I understand why the dark occultists that I worked with in my past think about people the way they do. I fully understand, and you know, people will sometimes even just, you know, doubt my sincerity or my intentions, because I will never put down the dark occultists. You'll never hear me. You'll hear me call them psychopaths, which they are. You'll hear me say they have a horribly poisoned worldview, but you know, I basically give them their due in that they are correct about most of the things that they talk about how the world really is. They're correct about it. You know, people really totally share in the responsibility and the brunt of what they are getting. They're getting exactly what they deserve in the world. The universe and natural law, ladies and gentlemen, is working perfectly. It always works perfectly. That's what you need to come to understand. Nothing is wrong here in the larger schema. Okay, in the larger picture of things, natural law is working to give us exactly what we created for ourselves. Know that.
Yeah, there's a video I used. I used like a few clips from different people's information and put it together. And one of them was of this guy kind of acting like he was dressed like the McDonald's clown, but acting like the Joker from the new film. And one of the last things he said in his video, and that part of it, and why I took that clip and added it in, was specifically that. Let me quote it properly. remember that most of the things that happen to you happen because of you.
That's right. We're bringing into our experience that which we really hold inside of us. The external reality is a reflection of what we collectively hold within us as a species. And think about that, folks. That means something. It means this is the best that we could create based on what's inside of us. How sad is that? If you really take a good hard look at the world from an honest point of view, how sad is that? And that's not to say to dwell in that. If you want to change it, the power to change it is within you. You have to care enough and then act on that care. Period. It's time to, the training wheels are coming off as a species. That's what this whole time of chaos is all about, you know? And if you didn't really get a firm foundation on how the laws of nature work, we're probably going to take a big spill. But if we do, then we will be able to fly on our own. But sadly, I don't see too many people really getting it and becoming truly aware. I think they're all looking for a cop-out or a handout or for somebody else to take that responsibility away from them. And tough luck, folks. The universe doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So you want to transition into talking about some of these suppressed energy technologies and how radically different the world might be if we rediscover some of these and put them into effect, actually create these technologies and put them into manifestation for the betterment of everybody, as opposed to the way we're doing things now, which is basically just looking out for ourselves and caring only about profit motive. And most people think that's fine. I still get people coming up to me and arguing constantly. The profit motive, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. That whole level of consciousness is based on me, having to gain over someone else. You can't just put something out there for the world. There has to be personal profit, personal gain over someone, trying to create a differential. Until people get out of that mindset, you're going to live in a cage. I don't know how much plainer or blunter I could be about it. And get as upset as you want, cry in your milk over it, cry in your beer over it. Okay? I'm not, like I said, I'm not the New Age type who's going to sugarcoat things for people and who's going to put it in the pleasing, gentle tones of the New Age teachers, because people want to hear the nice, pleasing tone. That's why the news reporters can feed them an absolute injection of poison, but they put it in a sweet, pleasing tone, and so everybody will eat the poison. But when somebody really tells you the way things are really going and what's really required to make that change come about that you say you want, and because if they put it in a little bit of a harsh tone because you're acting like a child and continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result like an idiot, and they try to tell you that bluntly because they consider you an equal who can handle it, everybody wants to get upset, and then they want to then create ad hominem attacks and just dismiss what that teacher is trying to explain to them. Well, you know what? The people who are explaining this bluntly, honestly, fearlessly, and with courage are the ones I respect more than anybody. They're not sugarcoating it. They're not treating people like babies. They're telling you, this is how the universe works. Grow up. Grow up. And that's it. That's it. And those laws are knowable, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not claiming to be the arbiter of those laws. I didn't put them in place. I'm telling you I do know how they work. Just like you can come to know the law of gravity or laws of electromagnetism. It's no different than that. Just because they don't operate purely in the physical domain does not mean they don't exist and don't have knowable attributions. They are knowable. So this whole idea of continuing to stay at the same level of consciousness and expecting a different result to manifest is pure folly. It's pure madness. And until we change that in ourselves, don't expect anything in the outside world to change. The consciousness has to change first, then the external manifestation will change, and not a moment until. Not a moment until.
Yeah, we all have to end up being like red blood cells for the Earth's consciousness. We have to eat away at this corruption and disease that's all around us. There's so much that needs to be just spoken about, and we need to like just
call it for what it is.
Yeah. It's very difficult for people to rationalize when you call them on their BS. Rationalize away all these things that they want to justify in their lives. That's all
they want to do.
Yeah.
All they want to do, because they want to remain spiritual, intellectual, psychological, and mental children. That's really what it's ultimately about. And the universe is calling us out of our adolescence. It's calling us out of our childhood. And nature isn't going to take no for an answer. The force of evolution always gets its way. Or that form will be destroyed and a new form will come and step up to take its place. And that's just it. That's how it works. Cry about it all day long, all you want. That's it. That's my advice to people. So I personally wanted to talk about three great geniuses, avatars, if you will, that have come into this world, into this physical domain in the last 100 years, okay, a little over 100 years in Tesla's case, okay, 150 years ago approximately, okay, and if we decide to heed their wisdom, rediscover their suppressed information, the world that we're going to see come into fruition, come into manifestation, is going to be a Type 1 civilization. It's going to be something that we can scarcely even imagine at this point. With the way things are now, things will be so radically transformed that most people will not even be able to imagine what things will be like in the future if we rediscover these three great inventors, visionaries, avatars, if you will, their ideas, their inventions, their principles. And those three individuals are Nikola Tesla, of course, Royal Raymond Rife, and Edward Leedskalnin. Now, my guess is most people have heard of Nikola Tesla who may be listening. Some people may not. We can get into who Tesla was. Very much fewer people will have ever heard of Ed Leedskalnin. But I would suspect that more people will have heard of him than the last gentleman I'll bring up, because he made a great work which he left behind called Coral Castle, which some people may have heard of. And in looking up information about Coral Castle in Florida, they will discover Ed Leedskalnin and briefly skim through some writings about some of his work. Royal Raymond Rife is probably the least known out of all of these three, and that's for a very good reason. And again, there's very little of his physical work which has survived, because the main thing that he was an optics pioneer and invented a very incredible microscope, and that we no longer have for people to marvel at as they do with Leedskalnin's Coral Castle, for example. And of course, Tesla, at least you hear about. There's many documentaries made about him, books written on him, again, movies made with his likeness, and people know about him simply because of the War of the Currents with Edison, and because he has a unit of magnetic induction named after him. Tesla Motors has a car named after him, and of course he brought the alternating current system of electricity into our homes. So there's much more tangible material that we have to work with about Tesla to make his name a little bit more known. The other two are even more radically marginalized in the modern world. So let's take them one at a time.
Yeah, I'd never heard of either one of these other gentlemen, and I think, to be honest, the very first time I'd ever even heard of Tesla was the Rock Band. That's the worst part about it.
Wow.
Like, this is how our society is so dreadfully off track when it comes to a lack of knowledge. So please educate us on these two gentlemen, because I've honestly never heard of them before.
Well, shall I start with Tesla, or do you want me to give you a brief background on the other two?
Would you mind giving a brief background on the other two first and then leading into Tesla? Because
Sure.
I just have never heard of them. Now you've piqued my curiosity.
The first thing I'm going to say is that every one of these individuals primarily worked with energy. Tesla worked with electrical energy, okay, and magnetics, okay? The system of alternating current works with rotating magnetic fields, okay? Lead-Skalman. Now, his name is Ed Lead-Skalman. Ed Lead-Skalman. I'll spell it. It's spelled Leedskalnin. Once again, Leedskalnin. Lead-Skalman. Okay? He was a Latvian immigrant, came to America. I believe in the 1920s, he erected a structure known as Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida. Okay? He basically carved immense coral blocks out of the bedrock underneath the topsoil in southern Florida, and basically built a castle in stone on his own, cut and moved these immense stone blocks, some of them weighing upwards of 20 tons, I believe, okay? Balanced one stone that weighed 9 tons, that's 18,000 pounds, on a ball bearing that was so perfectly balanced to the center of mass of the stone that a child was able to rotate it, like, it was a rotating door in the castle. A child was able to push it open with one hand. He said that he understood, in order to build this marvel, that he understood the principles with which the great builders of ancient times built the pyramids and the other ancient monolithic stone structures that they left behind. That's all he would tell people. He always worked alone. He was very secretive about his work. He said if he understood these principles, other people could come to discover them. But no one has cracked his code to this day. Clearly, Leedskalnin worked with magnetics. He had a magnetic flywheel, which he worked with, okay? And people think that that is the secret to how he managed to move these stones. People think he was working with rotating magnetic fields, aligning perhaps the a particular aspect of particles, or what we call atoms, that we do not yet really fully understand, and he may have isolated qualities of these particles that have to do with gravitational attraction and repulsion, so that he was able to line up these fields within matter so that they would create a reverse polarity effect and essentially create what we would consider anti-gravity, or the nullification of inertia, so that these stones would be able to be moved at will. They wouldn't have any weight. Their mass would essentially be canceled, and he would be able to float these stones. People never saw him actually doing it. There are some secondhand reports, but he decided to move the castle years after he built it. And these are, again, 10, 20-ton stones in some instances. He had a flatbed truck brought in, and it had solid rubber tires. People say, well, how could you put stones that big on a flatbed? The tires would explode. The tires were solid rubber. He would not allow the truck driver to see how he moved the stones. He just had him pull up the truck, wait there. He would load the stones, the driver would come back in the morning, the stones would be loaded. He would have the truck be left there. The driver would go, he would come back, the stones would be loaded, and he would never see how they got positioned on the flatbed. And then they would be brought to the new location, and Lead Scanlon would then do the process in reverse without allowing anybody to watch him, and then he rebuilt the castle in another position. People say that the speculation on why he may have done this is because he was using certain lines of energy that exist in the earth. Now, this is the field known as geomancy, the understanding of geomantic energy, or what are known as dragon lines in the earth. Some people will know these as their more commonly referred name, ley lines. You may have heard of ley lines. Now, these are natural energy patterns, just like the energy meridians that run throughout the human body that are tapped during acupuncture. Okay? The earth has these things because it is a living body. It is a living system of dynamic energy. And Lead Scanlon may have been moving Coral Castle to place it in closer proximity or directly upon one of these dragon paths or ley lines. Now, he left writings behind about magnetic current, okay? And he left a book that is a code book. It's written in code. It's a cipher that needs to be decoded. It's called A Book in Every Home. You can search this on the internet and download it. And he left every other page of the book blank. And he says he did this because if you didn't like what he wrote, you could try to do better. But this is a hidden code for, I wrote this book in code. This page is left blank intentionally so that you could decode the writing. He was very secretive. He was almost paranoid. He was 5 feet 0 inches tall and weighed 100 pounds exactly. I mean, a man that slight.
Yeah, it sounds like he could have been actually able to, like, create the pyramids, like recreate the pyramids almost with this sort of
This is all he would ever tell people, that he knew the secrets of how the massive stone blocks that created the pyramids on the Giza Plateau were raised. That's it.
Wow.
And, I believe him because look at what he accomplished. Has anybody else built anything like Coral Castle? When the stone door stopped working, they couldn't even fix the bearing to get it to turn again. Eventually, the immense weight damaged that the area of the ground that this bearing was turning on. And they had to have, like, huge cranes come in and lift this stone out. But it worked flawlessly for 50 years or more.
Wow.
I believe they finally got that door fixed, and it is now rotating correctly, if I'm not mistaken. But you have to look into his flywheel technology, and there's some missing components to that. People need to work on cracking his code in the book, A Book in Every Home. It's absolutely a cipher. And we need, cryptologists to go to work on this to figure out what was in this book. See, another thing is you unlock some of these technologies without the right mode of consciousness, you're going to have a weapon of destruction on your hands instead of a weapon of transformative power.
This was part of the reason why Jacques Fresco actually has not just flat out open sourced all of his designs, is because of some of his fears that in the past already, the military, while he was working with them to help create certain projects that were not weaponizable, that weren't that they weren't for weapons, they were for keeping soldiers safe, but they weren't weapons. Do you understand? Sure. And these technologies that he was working on, one or two of them, they found a way that they could use them towards certain ends, and unfortunately his patents were then weaponized to some small degrees. This sort of thing, as you can imagine, could really hurt and harm the psychology of someone who is in this sort of position, to know that their design that was meant to aid people and stop suffering was then used as a weapon. And it's truly terrible to hear that these sorts of things happen on a regular basis. And I know people may then be like, oh, yeah, welcome to the world. You're kind of naive, but, welcome to the world that you're finally waking up to these horrible things. And I'm like, and I wind up in that mentality where it's just like, why do we keep putting up with these things? I don't understand it. It just doesn't make sense that we continue these unfruitful, unproductive ventures as a species. And
the real answer to that question is because most people are unthinking people who have never read a book worth reading in their lives and who would rather follow orders because they don't want to take the responsibility for truly living. That's called a Nazi. That's what that's called, a Nazi.
And I like the way you
follow orders unquestioningly because they don't want the responsibility to really live life for themselves.
I like the way Barb put that as well before with the whole. I forget the word that you used to describe it, but it's like a way of looking at a word and seeing it for what it really is and such.
Green language.
There you go. There you go. And that when you look at the word Nazi, it kind of breaks down into not see those who do not see.
Those who do not see. That's right. And that's not accidental that language displays that capacity. It's not an accident. That's called synchromysticism. That's there for a reason. Language is a living thing, and it's telling us something all the time. We just have to be open to what it's telling us because it speaks these truths to us in strange ways that we wouldn't ordinarily expect. And it's not accidental that works out that way. Not at all.
Yeah, even like the single-sightedness of the monai, the money. Yeah, it's these sorts of things people really should start to look into. But I don't want to get us too far off track.
Sure.
What was this third gentleman?
Look at Tesla real quick. I won't go into him deeply. We'll go into Royal Raymond Wright. But Tesla, people say ostensibly that he was blocked because you couldn't meter the technology. But a lot of people think he backed off of these discoveries willingly because he realized that if he put them out there to the world, that we would probably destroy ourselves with them at our level of consciousness. So there's a whole body of researchers that think Tesla himself began to shut his own projects down and not attempt to develop them when he really came into a fuller understanding of the mindset of the den of vipers that he was surrounded with and realizing these were the people in control of the planet at the given time, and the world just wasn't ready for the transformative power of the technologies that could have been given to the world at that time through his knowledge and research and innovation. That he just willingly said, it's not time yet. And when the world is ready, when the consciousness is ready for that change, then it'll happen. And
maybe that's what this is all about.
Oh, the consciousness has to change first, like I said.
What I'm actually trying to say is, like, I've made this joke before on other shows, and I hope you'll just give me a second to interject. I apologize. In relationship to that thing of the necromancy and of the elites calling people the dead, I wonder if maybe the reason why, like right out of the joke from the movie Ghostbusters, there's a moment where they're like driving along, and Winston Zeddemore says to Ray Stantz, maybe the reason why we've been so busy lately is because the dead have been rising from the grave. And maybe that part of, like, just you and I speaking, as well as all the other people that are now out there finally speaking out and waking up, are creating a more exponential growth in this consciousness. And it seems like I don't want to put any special thing on myself. I'm just trying to say that I believe that we are a part of this. We are all.
I'd like to think so, anyway. I would like to think that's happening.
Sure. It's necessary to be co-authors of reality with our fellow humans and in these capacities, because without it, we're just going to be led into darkness by wolves in sheep clothing.
That's right. And that's what we have to learn to do, to take these training wheels off together and, all do this work together simultaneously. It's a collective effort. No one person is going to change the world. The world isn't the way it is because of any one person's outlook. It's all of those. It's a quantum effect. Quantum means an amount from Latin, okay, quantum. And when all of those little amounts come together, they form the macroscopic domain, the macroscopic dynamic that is taking place. So that's how we have to understand it. There is a collective movement taking place. The question is does it have a certain force behind it? Does it have critical mass? Does it have the amount of necessary dynamic movement behind it in order to put that over the edge and for it to become the driving force behind the evolutionary direction of humanity? I don't know whether I have a positive outlook about that or not. I'd like to think that that is happening, but I also think it's happening so slowly that time may be running out. You know, too many people are still resistant to that change because of their fear. They'd rather take a paycheck rather than actually help humanity. They'd rather continue to do their job with their head down and say, I'm not responsible for what's going on out there. I'm only looking at my little piece of the world. Do I have food on my table? Do I have clothes on my back? Are my kids in school? Am I getting a paycheck in? I understand it's easy to point the finger and say the problem is with the person out there. What I'm asking everybody to do is point the finger inward and say, what is the problem here? What am I doing that's part of this dynamic that I don't like to see? But, sadly, I think most people are just comfortable with it. They would just rather live their lives as kept pets rather than take the reins of life into their own hands and really live it. Most people don't want freedom. The idea of freedom has become something that they fear rather than want. I want unequivocal freedom, even if it means total failure. I would rather have total failure and pain through my own effort and be free in finding out what I did wrong, rather than be a slave and be perfectly safe and cared for. That's just me. I mean, and do people think it's wrong that I tell you that's what you should want too? And I don't have a problem. I'm not one of these New Agers that never says the word should. You ever notice that? The New Agers will never say to someone else, you should. No, there are things you should be doing and not doing. And I'm okay with saying that. I really do not care what other people think of me for saying that. You could say I'm arrogant. You could say I'm condescending. I don't care what you think of me. I'm going to speak the truth as I understand it to be, regardless of who thinks about me in any way, shape, or form. I am not bound or limited by what other people think, because I'm not in fear.
Yeah, we need this sort of courage. I was just going to say, yeah, it's exactly like you don't live in fear, and that's the whole base premise. I don't want to miss out on this third gentleman that you were speaking of, but like, is there anything that like you can think of to even help people get past that modality of fear? I mean, for me, it was this like, I don't know, the long dark period of the soul where I had to travel through that to try and get to the other side. I mean, you kind of helped me go down that rabbit hole, for lack of a better term, when it came to conspiracies and stuff, and introduced me to certain guys like Michael Tsarian and David Icke and Jordan Maxwell. And I'd heard of Terrence McKenna previously, but I know he's on your list as well of people that you have great respect for. And without
Bill
you,
Cooper,
yeah,
you can go on and on. I mean, there's so many. Manly P. Hall, great teachers out there that have really put such an enormous amount of effort. The proliferation of their work is immense. And, I mean, there's so many others. Rudolf Steiner. Like I said, you can just go on and on and on with great teachers throughout the ages.
And it seems like what I was getting at was that we have to all kind of go through that long dark period of the soul so that we realize that like the light at the end of the tunnel is not an illusion. The tunnel is the illusion.
Right. Exactly. My advice is the divine spark is actually courage. That's what ignites any act of will. You have to have courage in order to act. You have to have courage to want to know the truth. You have to have courage to want to change. You have to have courage, ultimately, to even want to care. Most people don't want to take the chance to care because they think they'll get burnt. I'll put all my care into this and then I'll get burnt because nothing will happen. I don't care whether anything happens. I'm going to care regardless of whether anything happens. Regardless of whether there's a payoff. You know why? Because that was the right thing to do. That's the only reason we need to be concerned with doing anything. Is it right? That's the question nobody ever asks, or very few do. You know, forget about asking whether this will get me this or that, whether this will get me recognition or money or fame or power or any of that. The question we need to ask before we take any action is this right? And how many people actually go into any given scenario asking that question? How many people even care of the interconnections that their actions have effect and have repercussions on the people that they affect and the situations they affect? I mean, you just think about people just working these jobs, just doing things for a paycheck, and they don't care. I mean, an example, my girlfriend's friend just recently bumped into a friend she hadn't seen since our college days, I guess, or, you know, a little bit older than that, and a little bit after college. And, you know, he was working for the parking authority in Philadelphia, which is, you know, just loathsome individuals that just, you know, create havoc on people, create problems in people's financial situation, cars getting towed, and everybody that works for them has this justified attitude, oh, somebody has to do it. You know, oh, there'd be chaos without them. People could never possibly park it within a city and figure out any methodology to have all of these cars in a city, you know, without us controlling it every step of the way and, you know, making a huge killing for private financial interests while we do it. So his answer, she said, I can't even believe I'm seeing you in this uniform. Well, what are you doing? And he goes, oh, come on, don't give me that. I have bills to pay, and, you know, it's not who I am. I'm just doing what they tell me. I'm just you know, doing this for a paycheck.
Yeah, I remember.
And he was okay with that.
Yeah.
He was okay with that answer. And she said, you know, that's the excuse that a lot of the Nazis tried at Nuremberg.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. Yes, exactly. How do people
That's what she
separate
said to
their
him.
consciousness from that?
I got to give her credit for saying that to his face. That's what more people need to do. Get up in other people's face and call them on their BS. She said to him, that's exactly what most of the Nazis said at Nuremberg. Now, I don't even know if that reference is lost on an individual like that. You know, that's the sad thing. You almost can't insult these people. They're so dumb. I mean, it's laughable. It's so sad, but it is laughable. I mean, did he even know what that meant? I wonder whether he knew what that meant. Because it didn't seem like, you know, she didn't say that he seemed to have gotten all flustered and angry and, you know, lashed back at her, which you might expect because someone just called you a Nazi, effectively. But I don't even think he understood what she was saying to him by saying a lot of the Nazis said that at Nuremberg. He might not even know what Nuremberg was.
Or how it relates, because, like, maybe he doesn't understand the fact that, like, when he does what he does and puts these tickets on someone's car, it ends up putting these people in a position where the state then has a record to go to your house and throw you in jail or do something else horrible to you if you don't pay XYZ fine within a certain time parameter. And that's, like, devastating to have someone go through something like that. I mean, if you're in a bad financial situation and because you just simply parked in the wrong spot, now, I understand it can also be inconsiderate towards others to certainly park in certain spots, and that should definitely. I don't know. I can only assume that it would have its own karma that would build into it to have that kind of level of disrespect for others.
See, Kevin, at the risk of totally destroying my career as a person who is putting information out there in the form of podcasts and doing radio shows, I mean, I've basically said this on my show, but I'll reiterate it here in an even stronger capacity. I want chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. I think a healthy dosage of chaos is what the earth needs. That's what the people of humanity needs. We're too safe. We are too safe. We are too addicted to the idea that everything must be safe and sterile. We've forgotten what it means to live and to feel. If we experience chaos, which is the failure of recognizing natural laws, then we will begin to learn how those natural laws operate, and chaos will be one of our greatest teachers. So I'm a fan of chaos. I don't fear chaos. I don't fear failure. I don't fear negative things happening. What I fear, or what I don't want to see, I should say, is the inability to recognize the causal relationship between the failure of recognizing natural law and the events that actually play out. Because that will turn into an eternal prison, essentially. The consciousness will be trapped in a place where it can never understand the causal factors that got it the result that it's seeing. And that's what this society is designed to do. It wants you, the whole society is designed so that you will never recognize how natural law works around you. And therefore you can never get out of the trap that you yourself are creating by acting in contravention to those laws. On the other hand, if chaos is allowed to happen, there will be a chaotic period, an interim period, where the person can learn from their mistake and then adjust it. In doing so, they're learning how the natural law works. Then they're adjusting their actions into accordance with that law, and then they're changing the manifested result. And that is how it works, man. I mean, I don't know how much plainer or clearer I can explain it. But that's what this whole society is designed to do, to make sure that process of learning never occurs within an individual's psyche. That's the whole thing it is designed to do. And the way that they designed to do that is through the fear of things being chaotic and disorderly. As long as people are in fear of that state, they are dismissing the greatest teacher. And chaos can be the greatest teacher in our experience. What teaches a kid how to ride a bike? You know how a child learns how to ride a bike? They learn how not to ride one. See, we're so against the negative. The negative, we need to embrace the negative. The negative should be our greatest friend.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines is to...
You know how Tesla invented alternating current? He invented 10,000 different ways not to carry electrical current by means of rotating magnetic fields and alternating current. He failed, and he wasn't afraid to fail. Experientially, experimentally, he was not afraid to fail. He kept failing over and over and over and over and over and over again until he got it right. That's how he learned. Failure.
Meanwhile, he's got the same guys on the sidelines laughing at him that were laughing at the Wright brothers.
Yeah.
We know how that worked out for those guys that were laughing.
Well, let's go back to the last gentleman and explain when we look at these three in conjunction, we see Tesla worked with electrical energy and eventually wanted to make electrical energy free for everyone through wireless transmission of power. That was his big forte, which never came to fruition. Standing wave technology through the earth, transmitting wireless power to any point on the globe. Okay, so you'd be able to plug devices into the ground or put an antenna on a device in the air, and you would be able to draw electricity from the wheelwork of nature. That's a hugely oversimplified explanation, but that's essentially what Tesla did. Free energy. And he experimentally proved that this was possible in Colorado Springs. And then he started working on a prototype at Shoreham, Long Island, New York, called Wardenclyffe Tower, and eventually that got shut down and was eventually destroyed in 1917. But wireless transmission of electrical power, Lead Skalman, possible anti-gravitic technology through magnetic fields, okay, maybe the discovery of the graviton, so to speak. understanding how gravity really works and can be nullified. Okay? So these are energy technologies related to each other. Okay? Now, the third individual, who is probably the most marginalized of all of them, if you could even imagine that, was Royal Raymond Rife. R-O-Y-A-L, Raymond Rife. R-I-F-E. Now, this is the person, if you're not already angry, which you should get angry when you understand that some of these technologies and what their implications are for society and their ability of these technologies to transform society, how they're being suppressed, that should create justifiable righteous anger in an individual. If they're a healthy individual with a healthy psyche that understands these implications because they're psychologically mature enough to understand them, okay, that should create some anger in you, and that's healthy because you realize nature doesn't belong to a corporation or a government or a country. It belongs to the world. It belongs to everybody. It belongs to all beings in the universe. It's our sovereign birthright. It is part of nature. We are part of it. There is a dynamic interchange of energy going on with everything. We have a right to use energy freely, not irresponsibly, but freely and responsibly. Taking the role of stewardship of this planet that we live on and not polluting it and not destroying the environment. And this was a clean source of free energy. Lead Skalman. What would this do for the ability of us to travel anywhere? Maybe even off-world, for all we know. But definitely on the surface of the Earth, open up restrictions of all forms of transportation. Stop using the dirty, polluting forms of transportation and fuels that we do. I mean, you'd be able to develop a hovercraft with hardly any moving parts, except maybe for this magnetic technology that he invented, or at least discovered an application of. The third person should probably make you the maddest if those two things already don't make you angry enough, because these things have been suppressed for 100 years or more. Royal Raymond Rife figured out a way to cure all known diseases, all illness that exists in the body. Now, I'm not talking about trauma like, falling and breaking your neck or something like that, or breaking, your leg or arm. That's a trauma-based form of,
incapacity.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about diseases that actually grow within the body. Cancer, viruses, bacteria, etc. All forms of known diseases that grow within the body. He did this because he was first and foremost an optics engineer. Studied at Johns Hopkins. He did a lot of research there. He developed, through assembling lenses that he got from all different companies all over the world, a microscope that had an immense amount of resolution capability, far in excess of the resolution capabilities that exist in the most modern, quote-unquote, electron microscopes of the modern day. The electron microscopes of the modern day are nowhere near the optical resolution of the Rife microscope. This was the first part of that was the key to his technology. He was able to see bacteria and viruses at levels of resolution that we can't even achieve today with the best microscopes out there. So he was able to see viruses while they're living. He was able to see the unified forms that bacteria and viruses come from. They're actually like a fractal. It's like a fractal form, just like the atom is fractal. You go down into the subatomic realm, then you go down into the quarks, then you get into smaller particles within quarks, and it keeps going and going. Viruses and bacteria are like that. And there's transitional forms that he was able to understand. You could put one of these forms into a certain tissue culture, and then it would express and it would form a certain kind of disease. In the presence, that same form in a different culture, it would form a different kind of disease. So he was completely eradicating the germ theory of illnesses through direct observation of viruses in vivo, which we still can't really do today. And scientists today will scoff, and doctors will scoff, and they'll say, oh, this guy was a quack or whatever. Look into his work seriously. Look up the documentary, The Lost Story of Royal Raymond Rife. The Forgotten Story of Royal Raymond Rife, and watch that whole documentary. There's also another documentary called The Royal Rife Story, simply. And just look them up. Now, the second part of what he had, in addition to this microscope that could see these causal virus and bacteria for almost every known form of disease, is he worked with frequency technology. And he developed a frequency beam generation device that could create a frequency field that he could aim at a specific area where certain microorganisms were growing in the body, for example, a tumor. And because he understood, he had found what he called the MORs, the mortal oscillatory rates, or in other words, what we would basically call the resonant frequencies of these microorganisms that are creating these diseases within the body. He would be able to explode by exposing the organism to its resonant frequency, or what he called the mortal oscillatory rate. He would expose them to this frequency and be able to explode only those organisms, leaving all surrounding tissue in the body completely unharmed, which is the exact opposite of what we do today in modern chemotherapy treatment. We kill all cells indiscriminately and hope that enough healthy ones survive after the cancer is gone. It's butchery. What Rife was doing was precision healing by understanding how all forms are based upon an underlying resonant energy. Leeds-Skalman was working with resonant energy in the form of anti-gravity. Nikola Tesla was working in the form of resonant energy in the field of electromagnetism. These three avatars are all interconnected. I'm telling you, we need to look up the works of these individuals, start to rediscover them, start to understand what they were capable of doing. They were trying to give all of this to humanity freely. Now, Leeds-Skalman was kind of fearful. I think he really thought that if, he exposed this too much, that either he would be done away with, which is highly likely that he would have. He was beaten within an inch of his life on one occasion, actually, by people who most people agree were agents of the government in some capacity. But I think he realized this could also be weaponized greatly. And that's why he wrote a lot of his real discoveries down in code, and that we would have to be at a certain level of consciousness in order to decode it. Tesla took his work, fragmented it into 5 pieces, put it in 5 different countries so that no one person would have all of the keys to putting together all of his work, unless nations worked hand in hand together. And Rife, what they did to him was horrible. I mean, it's a shame. And this is why some people dismiss his research, because he actually became somewhat of an alcoholic because he was so persecuted. The AMA had him arrested. They destroyed his laboratory. They took his microscope. He lost most of his life's research. He did get some things published, and there's some tapes remaining with his work, with some of his work and some of the ideas behind it, but no one has that microscope, nothing like it. There's Rife frequency machines, nothing on the order of what he had put together, but that wouldn't be too difficult to get, study the frequencies and make the generator. We don't have the microscope that we could be using to observe these underlying viral forms and bacterial forms, not only in vitro but in vivo, so that we can understand what we need to do and what frequencies we need to expose these things to rid ourselves of them. Now, think about putting all of these things together. All of them based on energy, all of them based on forgotten technologies, all of them based on resonant frequency in some form or another, and look at the transformative capacity that they could have. Free energy, unlimited transportation in ways we can scarcely even imagine now. The interconnections between people would be unbounded. Forget about borders of countries. Talk about not being able to control anybody. This would be the elite's global nightmare. Anybody can travel anywhere and have all the energy they could possibly need. You could green deserts with Tesla technology. Bring water to where there would be no water otherwise. Grow food in places where, right now there's drought and starvation. And with Rife's technology, eliminate worldwide disease. I think I have a bigger understanding of why the psychopaths who are in control through their oil cartels, through their pharmaceutical cartels, through their control of transportation and industry, don't want any part of any of these three people. And certainly don't want you understanding them or looking into them or trying to get involved with groups to rediscover their work and bring it to fruition. I guarantee you that.
It's amazing, the body of knowledge that we've had suppressed. I mean, even then they only seem to bring this sort of thing out when it's necessary. And I'm wondering, maybe that's the reason why it's starting to come out, because it really is necessary that we start to understand all these things. I mean, when Haiti had an earthquake last year, Michael Reynolds, the creator of the Earthships, if you want to go and learn more about him, you can see the documentary called Garbage Warrior, where he essentially helped create houses back in the 60s and 70s that were made out of recycled or reused materials. And by the time you're done, these homes were based in such a fashion that you could be completely sustainable and off the grid, like water catch systems, say solar and or wind energy, depending on the situation, as well as capability of creating your own food through, say, aquaponics and hydroponic systems where you have fish below and vegetables up top. And you've got all these different ways that you can actually just simply sustain yourself in such a capacity that you can completely live off the grid and never pay another bill again. And that just, I'm sure that frightens the hell out of them too. But when it comes to the idea of, oh no, we need a situation, we've got a big situation down in Haiti, all these people need their lives rebuilt, they're like, okay, sure, let's send this guy in and we'll give them this technology so they can start working on this sort of thing.
We're so complacent here in the Western civilization because we think that everybody lives the way we do. 40% of the people of the earth have no electricity in their homes. 4 out of 10 people. Imagine that.
Yeah, I just read a study actually the other day. It was by next year, right now there are about, I think it's something like 0.8 billion people in the world don't even receive the proper amount of healthy water.
Right.
And by next year, there will be a whole billion people with access to iTunes. Or something. It was something like that. It was sort of like computer program
that's clearly more important than something as trivial as water. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. It's only like 70% of the Earth is made up from it, so it's kind of like BS that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's all a matter of just why aren't we properly getting these things out to people? I mean, it's as if we.
Kevin, look at the ability of Tesla technology. Not only that it would have been able to carry electrical power wirelessly over distances, but any information that we wanted to send over distances wirelessly. I mean, imagine if communication were uncontrolled, how much faster knowledge would flow throughout the world, and the world could become a global neural network. I mean, Tesla's technology had free communications capability built into it, not just free energy. I mean, how many people are paying tons and tons for data capabilities, internet, cell phones, to bring text, sounds, and images to where they want information at. Limitation of information is also a huge power differential in the hands of people who want to control that data and the access and free flow of it. So Tesla's technology would not have only opened up the doorway to free energy, wireless transmission of power, but also free communications wirelessly globally. And that's another thing they don't want. They want to lock down that too. How few companies have a hegemony on global communications? I mean, look at Comcast, Verizon, Sprint, AT&T.
Yeah.
I mean, how many more? You have T-Mobile. They're a minor player. I think they just merged with AT&T. I mean, it's going into fewer and fewer hands.
Yeah, it's almost like the mass media too, where there's like now five, six different companies that offer pretty much the entirety of what's on television, like cable and everything.
Oh, and newspapers too. Don't forget, they own those too. All media. I mean, that's what this system of control is about: centralization of power and information in certain people's hands who will grant access to it at their disposal. Information does not belong to certain individuals. It belongs to the world. I don't even charge for anything on my website. Everything up on my site is free. The whole archive of data is for free because none of it is mine. This is information that exists in the world that I have come to know, come to understand, come to share. That's it. That's what we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen. You want to know what the whole point of life is? You came to this planet to learn the necessity and the importance of sharing freely among each other and not hoarding things and keeping them for ourselves. That's it. You came to understand there's essentially no difference. Everybody has the same needs, requirements. We're all made of energy. We all need energy to live. Energy is here for all of us in great abundance. We need to learn. We need to change our level of consciousness to understand we are all here to share, and then we will have access to all the energy we need. But as long as we're in this mentality of scarcity and me first, and I got to get mine before anybody else gets theirs, you're in the cage. And you'll stay there for eternity if need be. And I say, wonderful. The universe is working exactly perfectly.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I mean, it does kind of feel weird though sometimes when you have these moments where you're like, wow, deja vu or synchronicity, and it's like, wow, you just feel these moments have like its ineffable quality to them. You can't really explain how profound they are to other people, but it would seem that in a lot of ways that we are just learning this giant lesson, and I guess how long will it take for us to really get it right? I mean, we have such a short amount of time. It feels like my next guest actually for next week's show is Derek Jensen.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know the name Derek Jensen and not know how much he hates current civilization and how it's literally raping our natural world. I mean, and I'm betting he even would be against, say, Tesla's technology for one reason or another, just because of the fact that he was involved in creating the first dam, like the Niagara Falls Dam, for hydroelectric power. And now it's amazing that we came up with this technological beauty that allowed for all this energy to be tapped into, but at the same time we also destroyed much of the natural environment to create this. And
sure.
And these are the types of things we have to start to look at as well. There needs to be a balance in the things that we know now with the things that we used to know, and a way to bring them together in such a way that it truly benefits society and benefits humanity.
That's what it's all about. That's what all technologies need to be dedicated in the service of doing, acting in the benefit of humanity. If we put them forward for any other reason, ultimately they're not really serving. And to go back to answer your question, they're not really serving who we are unless that's what they're put forward for. Like Tesla said, science which is the foundation of any technology. He said science is a perversion of itself, unless it has as its ultimate goal the benefit of humanity. That's it. And those are words of wisdom that many more scientists in the modern age should be living by. And sadly, most of them are not, because they're brainwashed into this whole profit motive, and they worship at the altar of the patent god, inventors and scientists who just want to get theirs. How many transformative technologies have been sold into a black hole? Think about that. How many inventors have sold out to industry or government when they discovered that they had a transformative technology? They come up, they make them an offer. You'll be rich. You'll be able to retire to some island. All you got to do is give me all rights to your technology. They do it, and then the technology gets crushed. You know how many times that's gone on in the last century? More times than you would want to know about. And to answer your question finally about how much longer is this going to have to go on, I'll just quote from one of my favorite bands, The Doors. Jim Morrison wrote in the song 5 to 1, "No one here gets out alive." We're going to be back over and over and over and over and over again until we get it right, whether on this planet or on another one. No one here gets out alive. You're going to get the lesson, whether you want to get it or not. It's not a choice. Evolution is a law. And we're coming up to this choice, this moment of choice in the collective human consciousness, whether we will evolve, whether we will choose to evolve, or whether we will choose to die. But don't get me wrong, that still won't be the end. Other lessons, the lesson will be gotten at some point or another, no matter how much resistance is put up. No matter how many walls we try to erect, they will all be broken down at the end of the day, no matter how long it takes. It's just a matter of how much suffering do we want to continue to endure, and how long do we want to be going through that suffering. And that choice is no one's but ours. No one's but ours.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it does put it squarely in our hands then at that point to go out and learn these things on our own and grow on our own. And no one involves in isolation, so I don't want to say completely on our own, because we're going to need each other. But
sure.
But we definitely need to know these things for ourselves to then be able to take it to that next plateau to do it all together.
That's right. And Kevin, when we finally do integrate these transformative technologies, if we do before the clock strikes midnight, so to speak, and we become a Type 1 civilization, who knows what wonders are going to lay on the other side of that barrier, and what kind of civilizations we may encounter. And that's, people ask me why I even do any of this, why I even look into any of these things and then try to teach this. It's because I want to see what we're capable of. I've answered that many times as the answer to why I do this. I think we have way more potential as a species, and I want to see what we're capable of, and I think we could go to the stars. The stars are the limit. If we only give ourselves permission to do that. We need to forgive ourselves of whatever this crazy thing and deep nested in the human psyche that we're so fearful of letting go of, and give ourselves the permission to evolve. But if we keep doing the things that we're doing and thinking that they're okay, completely outside of natural law and the rights that we inherently have, and trouncing on the rights of others and suppressing technologies and putting people, marginalizing people and suppressing technologies for a paycheck, and suppressing the rights and attempting to usurp the rights of others for a paycheck, and claiming it's not my fault, it's not my responsibility, I'm not the one doing it, they gave me the orders, you're carrying out the actions. No cop-outs. Full responsibility placed firmly on the people doing it. I just saw the movie X-Men First Class last night. I occasionally go out to a movie. Me and Barb went out to see X-Men First Class, and I thought the message was great. I only hoped it would have taken an even harder edged stance, because I invite you to watch that movie, and I'm not along the alignment with Professor X. I don't agree with his stance. I think he's too much of an apologist throughout the whole X-Men series, his character.
Well,
I align myself more with Magneto's philosophy.
I think that they were originally, when Lee had created these characters, he did so to try and bring the civil rights concepts to the average white teenager, to be honest, because I don't think that people understood what the struggle was really all about. So he created the Professor X character to be like Martin Luther King, and I believe he kind of created the Magneto character to be very much like a Malcolm X type.
That's right.
Like by any means necessary, like you were just speaking of, and these allegories still hold true in today's retellings, it sounds like, from what you were saying with this movie.
Well, I'd recommend anybody to see it, and after seeing it, Magneto is my new hero. That's all I'll say. Because he's not an apologist. He's not an apologist for dumb people. And I want to be more and more blunt about what is really going on.
Well,
I think that's the only way we're really going to be honest with ourselves and others. We have to be blunt. We have to say what we really feel without sugarcoating it. And I think the people who are holding back humanity are dumb people. That's it. I mean, I can't say it any simpler than that. I think the bureaucrats are dumb people. I think police in general are dumb people. I think government workers in general are dumb people. I think Nazis all over the world, in whatever time they've existed, in whatever place they've existed, in whatever future incarnations and manifestations that they will exist in, always have been, are now, and always will be dumb people.
It's because they're foolish enough to actually believe that they have the right to assert their force and personal authority on top of another's.
There it is. They don't understand their uniqueness, their sovereignty, the spark of the divine that exists in them, because they're so fearful. They're fearful little children. And the people who are ready to move forward and who are ready to evolve need to stop being so apologetic for these individuals. They're children. And we as adults cannot continue to let children hold us back from our birthright. And that evolutionary progression in consciousness is our birthright. And no one is going to take it from us. No one is going to steal it. No one is going to usurp it. We are going to manifest it by any means necessary.
I like the way Bill Hicks put it. I mean, it kind of sums up a lot of what we've just said here. It's a slightly longer quote because it's generally how he ended many of his shows. And I just want to kind of mention this here because I think it's so important. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings and money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear, when you put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love, instead, see us all as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Because that's one of the things we always said, life is just a ride. So here's one of the things we can do to make it a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which would many times over, not one human being excluded. And we could explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.
Hear, hear. Bill was great, wasn't he?
Yeah, I know. What a hero! Like, I can't believe he's gone. Like, if there's anyone I'd like to bring back from the dead and have take on, just be the voice of the truth. I mean, that's partially why I stood up myself, is because I'd heard all these words from him before when I was a child. Like, as a teen, I grew up listening to some of his stuff because I videotaped it overnight on a whole bunch of marathon was going on of comedians, and he happened to be one of them. And it always stuck with me for some reason since that very young age when I first heard it, because I guess he just was locked into this truth vibration, this truth frequency.
Absolutely.
And because he was able to stay in that modality, and it always attracted me because of the various things that happened to me during my lifetime, such as finding out that I was adopted, and that was just wow, what is my truth really? Who really am I?
It's too bad so many light workers moved on before we had a chance to see what their take or perspective would have been in this time, Terrence McKenna, another one I can think of that I would have loved to have heard his perspective about what's happening now, Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of almost see it as if we are a part of this awakening, and we see the fact that I guess it was in Chymatica or Esoteric Agenda, I forget which one, where they spoke about how they took these lactose enzymes and had them in a dish with some sort of life form that couldn't actually eat lactose without killing itself normally. Right. And it somehow rewrote its own DNA to be able to start then extracting the proteins it needs out of this lactose.
And so we have that capability as well.
And because
the work of Bruce Lipton, you should look into Bruce Lipton's work, listeners out there, who shows that we can change our own internal makeup and even down to our cellular structure and DNA to suit any new environment that we may be in, because all of those genes are actually controlled by consciousness, not the other way around.
Makes you think that we kind of are we really are the X-Men, trying to
Yes, to mutate into a new form through consciousness. Absolutely.
Yes.
Do we have anybody that wants to participate, or any callers in on the line?
Sadly, they never called. No one else has called in. I left a number in the chat room a few times, and
not a problem.
Yeah, I will have.
Want to tell them the events one more time, and then I guess we could wrap it up unless anybody calls in the interim. But let them know about your fundraiser again. We'll tell them about the Tesla event one more time, and I guess we could leave it there.
Right on. Thank you. Once again, this is going to be on June 24th, Friday, June 24th. The night of. It's technically the 25th from 12:30 a.m. until 6 a.m., but it's essentially the night of June 24th. It's called Cock-a-Doodle-Doo, a night of laser tag and music for the Venus Project. You can find out more information at myultrazone.com in order to get the directions to get there. It's at 4201 Neshaminy Boulevard in Bensalem, PA. And we will also be having a small area beyond just the music and the laser tag. There will also be an area for a movie that I created, which is about 3 hours long, where people can just sit in there and relax and take in whatever they wish. It's actually on my YouTube account also. It's called blueprints for Star Trek, RBE and TVP basics, and RBE stands for Resource-Based Economy, and it's basically created by TVP, the Venus Project. These are the ideas that they're trying to espouse of us ending money, and just like in the Bill Hicks quote that I just mentioned, that's really what we're looking to do is feed, clothe, and house the entire world in such a fashion that it would take, just 10 to 20 years to change the face of the globe and take us into that next level.
And it absolutely can be done. Absolutely.
Especially if we had the help of, say, the Nikola Tesla Club, which will also be there showing off a actual firing working Tesla coil. I saw it the other day. It raised the vibe. It was totally beautiful and totally amazing to watch that energy spark light up a fluorescent tube.
It'll be all the more impressive in the darker surroundings over there, too.
We can definitely turn out the lights for that. The awareness room, I think, that will have that will probably be lit up in such fashion people can also collect information.
Sure.
But we can definitely turn off those lights in that room to be able to take a really good look at it for people a few times. I am really looking forward to seeing that again, because it's just such a remarkable piece of technology to watch explode like that, and it just the crackle and the arc, and it's just, I don't know, I've never seen anything quite like it before, and like you can hear that buzzing, and you just know that there's something like kind of radiating and being pulled into this compressor that then just arcs out.
It's radiant energy, and that's what we all are. Intuitively, we all know that's what we all are. We're living in an energy matrix. This is an electrical universe, and that's what we all ultimately are made of at some foundational, fundamental level.
And then since they'll be there, they'll basically be for specifically the not only just adding awareness for Tesla that night into the Venus Project's fundraiser, but also Raise the Vibe is going to be working with the Tesla Group as well for the lawns of on the lawns of Independence Visitor Center in order to create a festival-type atmosphere where people can also learn about this same technology. And that's in conjunction with the energy celebration, Nikola Tesla Energy Independence celebrations. Mark, if you want to then take it from there to give one last bit of detail.
Sure. I won't go into full details on each of the events. I'll just give the general outline. The Nikola Tesla Energy Independence Celebrations 2011, hosted by the Tesla Science Foundation of Philadelphia. July 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th in Philadelphia. The 4 events are the Tesla Science Conference, the Tesla Science Foundation Social, featuring a orchestral performance by the Divine Hand Ensemble, the Tesla Birthday Celebration featuring a Tesla Coil exhibition, and the Tesla Fest featuring exhibitions and open discussions at Independence Visitor Center. For more information on all of the festivities that comprise this great event coming up here next month in Philadelphia, check out the Tesla Science Foundation's website at www.tesla, T-E-S-L-A, sciencefoundation.org.
Thanks again, Mark, for calling in and sharing all this information with my viewers. Mark here is the guy who actually kind of inspired me to do my own show after me calling in so many times onto his. So would you mind giving the talk show call letters out and when your show is on so that people can get a hold of you as well?
Yeah, the podcast archive is still hosted at TalkShoe. I don't do the show live through TalkShoe anymore because I'm now carried by Oracle Broadcasting, O-R-A-C-L-E, oraclebroadcasting.com. And my show is live every Sunday evening, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Oracle Broadcasting. You could also listen to the show live on my website at whatonearthishappening.com. Just click the radio show tab, 5 to 7 p.m. every Sunday evening, What on Earth is Happening radio show. On TalkShoe, the call ID number is 83515. You could check out the podcast archive there, but there's actually more supporting data in the podcast archive on my website at whatonearthishappening.com's data that goes along with each individual show is posted to that podcast archive.
And at whatonearthishappening.com, you can also find the Free Your Mind conference videos, links to them as well, and they're on YouTube at what's your site again? It's Not For Sale to NWO?
Yes, that's actually the Intel Hub, which I work with along with Bob Tuscan. So their YouTube channel is youtube.com/notforsale2 NWO, Not For Sale to NWO. You could check that out. All the Free Your Mind conference videos are there. You could also get them on the official conference website, which is freeyourmindconference.com.
Yeah, some of those videos were really amazing. Like I mentioned, Jan Irvin, Bob Tuscan, you just mentioned.
Everyone needs to see that Jan Irvin video and really process the information in it and understand it.
Yeah, same thing with Larkin Rose's video. That whole analogy he gives is how society is kind of like this like volcano god analogy. It was just really beautiful the way he put it. Yeah,
Larkin's great, a great local activist here in the Philadelphia area. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you again. I want to thank you for your activism and stepping up and doing what you do. It's much appreciated. Keep up the great work, and I'd be honored to come back on any time. I want to thank you for having me on today, and keep it up, man.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. I guess that's a wrap, folks. This was Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com on my little show, Caution Tinfoil Hat Area. It was really great to have such a mentor almost in this like rabbit hole, like I mentioned, that I went through for so long. And please, everyone, remember that it truly is not an illusion, that light at the end of the tunnel. It's truly the tunnel itself that is the illusion.